Great. Well, welcome everyone to the task force meeting. And we are delighted here today to have Laura also joining us. And if you don't know Laura, she's an amazing leader for community planning and development. And Laura, we know you're doing several meetings at the same time. Are you wanting to speak before we do introductions because you have to be somewhere else, or would you like us to go through introductions first? What's the best for you?
Yeah, let's do introductions. I've got time between now and 3:30 for the next half hour. So I'd like to, whenever, if you can fit me in that time slot, that would be awesome. But happy
worries.
just to listen and just cue me when you're ready for me.
Great. And this time we're going to do introductions so that Laura's certain that we have updated people of who they are and what they represent, that sort of thing. So Yvonne, let me turn it to you to go ahead and move us through introductions, and we'll just start with the people who are here and come back to other people as they're able to join us.
Great. Welcome back, everybody. My name again is Yvonne Miranda, and I am with the Strategy with Rocks team. I will circle back to our team and to CPD. But for now, let's get started with, I'm going to go in the order that you are on my screen since we don't have very many of you.
Well, Yvonne, actually, let's do CPD team while we wait for the other task force members to get on, and our team first.
Great. Let's start with CPD. Liz, would you like to kick it off?
Sure, great. And we're just saying our name for this one.
And we'll actually, for where you're from, community you represent for community representatives.
Okay, great. So I'm Liz Weigel. I'm a member of the project team. I'm the rezoning supervisor. And so I'll throw it over to Brandon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brandon Shaver, also a member of the Advancing Equity in Advancing Equity in Rezoning. A lot of letters there. I'll throw it to Andrew.
Andrew, you're on mute.
I think he's trying to unmute.
All right, let's see if Kyle, why don't you go?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Kyle Dalton with the Department of Community Planning and Development.
Rob?
I am Rob Haig. I'm a member of the project team and also an associate city planner with CPD. And it looks like we bought Andrew enough time. So
go team.
Thank you for that, Rob. Andrew Webb, principal city planner here with CPD and a member of the project team and one of the team leads for our rezoning group.
Thank you. And is this a good time for Laura?
Well, we're going to have Laura introduce herself and with comments later.
Okay. All right, Laura, you got off the hook for this one. Robin, would you like to kick us off? Introductions, your name, as well as community organization you represent.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Robin Wood Mason, he, him pronouns, and I'm the CEO at Community Shares of Colorado, and I represent the Baker neighborhood as well.
Thank you. Kate Hilberg and Caitlin Quander.
Hi, I'm Kate Hilberg. I represent Habitat for Humanity of Metro Denver.
Hi, everyone. Caitlin Quander. I'm a land use attorney here in town. Was on Blueprint Task Force and also now on Planning Board. I'm sorry, I'm eating. I missed lunch, so I'm eating. So if I turn my camera on and off, that's why.
Thank you. It's all good. Joel Noble, followed by Londell Jackson.
Hi, everyone. Joel Noble. I use he, him pronouns. I live in the Curtis Park neighborhood in 5 Points, and on this task force, I'm representing Denver Planning Board.
My name is Londell Jackson, and I represent myself. I is a employee of the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment.
Thank you. Alfonso Espino, followed by Claudia Folska. Alfonso, are you with us?
You're still on mute, Alfonso.
He's having trouble with his audio. We'll go ahead and move on to Claudia.
And Claudia, we know it takes you a couple of more minutes to unmute. Don't worry about the time. Alfonso, if you want to just put in chat, you're the neighborhood you're with, we can do it that way as well.
And there we go.
Okay, sorry about that. I
Yay.
had to get, well, there's my mute and your mute. So I had to find all kinds of unmutes. So I'm Dr. Claudia Polska, former board member for RTD District E and a citizen today. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. And lastly, Lindsay Miller.
Hello, Lindsay Miller. I'm with Beyond Growth Strategies.
Thank you
And for
so
those
much.
of you, for you who can't see chat for whatever reason, Londell is with Sunnyside Neighborhood and a very proud member of Sunnyside Neighborhood, I would tell you from earlier task force members. And Alfonso is a proud member of Ilaria Swansea. So thank you all.
Thank you all for being here. I'm going to kick it off to Sabrina, who is part of the Strategy with Rocks team.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here tonight. My name is Sabrina White. I'm the Strategic Project Manager with Strategy with Rocks. Yeah, happy to be here.
And Roxanne White.
Great. I should have introduced myself when we first started, but I'm your lead facilitator, and it's always good to be with this group. And it's great. We had a couple of folks who couldn't attend today who let us know. And so some of them have backups who are listening in for them. And so thank you for those of you who are listening in, particularly on behalf of task force members and agreeing to update them. And just a reminder, there will be plenty of time at the end for public comment for you all to be part of that at the end for anybody who is in attendance. So thank you all for doing that. And I think on that note, we will turn it back to CPD and to Laura. It's okay,
All
take
right.
your time coming off of mute.
Yeah, I had to get off of mute. And thank you, everyone. So for those of you who don't know me, and hopefully it's not echoing, I'm in a large room. So let me know if it's difficult to hear me. My name is Laura Aldrete. I'm the Executive Director of Community Planning and Development. And so we've obviously, you have been working quite a bit with all the staff at CPD and contributing your time. I appreciate, one, just that you've been engaged in this process over the last year. Because of the work that has been going on from this task force, we've really been able to identify issues that lead to inequities in the city's rezoning process, as well as better understand potential solutions that the city can undertake. During this time that you've been contributing, it's really become clear that requiring some form of equitable development commitment from rezoning applicants in the future will be a crucial component to for this work's success. So I'm thrilled at the advancement and the clarification that has happened through this process. And solutions like this, and others will really help ensure that our rezoning process is equitable and accessible to the Denver community. And Liz will talk about this a little bit more in a few minutes. I first wanted to join this meeting today just to thank you for your work and your commitment to our city, as well as discuss some schedule updates that we have for the project. As we are thinking about the holiday season approaching, right, and thinking about our work program for 2023, and as you may have seen or heard, right, we continue to deal with some staffing struggles, vacancies, with successes, and yet we're still aggressively hiring. We are thinking about the time and the work that city staff needs to put into this project in order to make sure that the time that you're putting in to the task force is productive and valuable as well. It's important to me that we recognize that there are so many demands on your time, and that we show that our respect by using your time efficiently during these meetings, listening to your input, and do the work we need to do to act on your input. So several of the solutions identified by the task force will require work internally to make sure that there are solutions that the city can implement. And we need more time. We need time to make progress on this so future task force meetings will be productive and efficient for our community volunteers. At the same time, we you may have also noticed a number of staffing challenges in our department, as I mentioned earlier. And right now we're hiring to fill multiple positions on the team that is responsible for overseeing projects like this. We want to give the project the attention and the focus it deserves. And to that, we need, and to do that, we need additional time to bring our new hires up to speed. So all of that collectively, we are looking at using the next few months to ensure this project is properly staffed for success. And to do the legwork we need to prepare for future task meetings while you're enjoying a much deserved break for the holiday season. So just after today's meeting, we expect to reconvene the task force in late winter, early springtime, and hope that you will return to continue serving on the task force next year. There's been great strides made in improving an important aspect of development in Denver. And because of this group's work, and we look forward to continuing the momentum later in late winter of 2023. So I'll turn it back over to Liz, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to take those or points on that, on my thoughts there.
That's great. Let's just because we had a number of people who joined partway through, let's make certain we do introductions of everybody else who's here first for you. So Yvonne, if you can go back to the folks who are newer here and ask them to introduce themselves, just that would be great. And then we'll go to questions.
Absolutely. Let's have Maggie, Anna, and Brandon introduce themselves.
Hi, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Maggie Lee, she, her pronouns, and I am here representing the Neighborhood Development Collaborative.
Thank you, Anna.
Hi guys, Anna DeWitt, task force member. Had trouble signing on last time. What am I introducing? Have we done this?
Name and organization.
Oh, I don't know if I'm affiliated with any organization, really, just really interested in housing.
Thank you. Brendan?
Hi, Brendan Green with the East Colfax Community Collective.
Councilwoman Sandoval and Monica.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Councilman Sandoval, Northwest Denver, District 1.
Hi, Monica Martinez with the Fax Partnership and real estate owner on East Colfax.
I think we got everyone.
Great. So let's just summarize for folks who came in a few minutes late. CPD is going to take some time to be able to plan and work on the recommendations and work on all of the tasks that will go forward today and looking at feasibility and next steps. And we will be canceling our next 2 meetings in 2022. And then after they've had a chance to dive deep on the recommendations and bring back solutions for the task force, they will be reconvening the task force in 2023. Laura, you said it much more eloquently than that, but I just wanted to summarize for those people who are a couple of minutes later coming in. Team, what did I miss? And are there any questions for the CPD folks?
All right, I guess everyone's letting me off the hook easy.
Well, Laura, thank you for double booking yourself in meetings and being able to join, and to thank the task force for the work that's happened so far. And on that note, Liz, I will go ahead and go ahead.
No, I'll just hang out. I would like just to hear a little bit longer for another 15 minutes. So if something comes up, but just happy to hear the conversation. Thank you.
Great. Liz, I'll go ahead and turn it to you. And Rob, I think, or no, Andrew, we're ready for slides. I'm not certain actually, is it Rob or Andrew showing slides? Great. It's you, Rob.
Okay,
yep,
great.
It is.
Great. Thank you, Laura, for that, those introductory remarks. And thanks again to everyone for joining us today. I'm going to, in this presentation, we're going to walk through just, it's been since mid-September since we met, and I just want to remind us about how we got to where we are today in the process. Then we're going to share the strategies that we've been working on that are rising to the top, the solutions all the ideas we heard as a group and the ones that we as CPD staff have been working on. And then following the presentation, we'll have plenty of time to answer questions and have discussion on them. You can go to the next slide, Rob. So first, as Laura noted, we're incredibly grateful to the task force for the dedication that you've given to this project and the discussions that we've had over the last several months. And together we've come up with potential solutions that we feel can really make a true difference to incorporate equity into our rezoning process. As Rox reiterated, following today's meeting, we anticipate the task force will be taking a break, and we expect we'll reconvene when we've kind of made progress on concrete solutions to bring back to you to discuss. And we'll reach back out before we do so to give you a status update and check in on your capacity to continue on the task force, because we certainly recognize that some of you may not be able to extend your commitment beyond what we originally asked you to do. So we'll certainly check in with you on that ability to continue working with us. But for today, we anticipate we will share the potential solutions we've been working on together. So just a quick reminder on why we're doing this project. As all of you know, we have citywide guidance in Blueprint Denver that really directs us to update our rezoning process, to integrate equity and address the equity concepts that are highlighted in our adopted plans. We also have heard from our community about frustrations with the rezoning process and a concern that it is not accessible and transparent, and that it can result in disparate impacts in neighborhoods. Go to the next one, Rob. So this is a modification on our typical timeline slide. So we started this project by discussing the current rezoning process and identifying issues both with the task force and through feedback with the community and focus groups. And we identified 5 key issue areas shown in that blue box there. And we did a deep dive through our task force meetings over the summer and into September to discuss each of those areas and potential solutions so we can get to identifying strategies that will eventually get us into our real tool development and our zoning text updates. We have since been working to evaluate the potential strategies against the project goals and objectives, and we will share the strategies that are rising to the top today. And then, as Laura stated, we expect we will reconvene the task force as we continue to work through those solutions and have additional ideas to bring to you. So go ahead to the next one. So this chart on this slide describes the process of how we identified the potential strategies and the criteria that we are using to evaluate those solutions, which was included in the issue identification report that was shared with you all. And I'll explain those further in a couple of slides. But overall, this evaluation will help us get to a preferred approach or a package of recommended changes to the rezoning process that we will then continue to share with you for further feedback. Next one. So these are the 5 issues that were detailed in the issue identification report and what we used in our detailed discussions of potential solutions over the last several months. Some of the proposed solutions will address several of these issues, while others are specific to 1 or 2. The next one. And then, as I mentioned in the issue identification report, and we've brought up a couple of times in these meetings, these are the 4 criteria that we've identified to evaluate alternatives. So as we're looking at potential solutions, we check them against these criteria. And the first one is effectiveness. So really, does the proposed solution promote those equitable outcomes? Is it identifying the issues that we've identified together and really achieving those project goals? The second is equity. So making sure that we're addressing the issues that were identified from that wide range of stakeholders and ensuring that we are really providing that equitable access to the process. The third is flexibility. Throughout our discussions, we've discussed that there's a wide range of rezoning cases and applicants, from small individual homeowners to large multi-acre rezonings that are being led by developers. And we've acknowledged that it's important that the solutions recognize this variety and respond to the size and the types of rezonings. And then the last is predictability, and we want to make sure that the updates are predictable, clear for all stakeholders, so that people really understand how to participate in the process, understand the steps, and really understand how rezonings are evaluated and ultimately decided on. We also considering the importance of feasibility of implementation, so looking at potential costs to the city, staffing, and our necessary approval processes with City Council.
So Liz, let's just pause for 1 second and see if everybody's it's clear where we've been from the process to get to it. You know, everything was in the issues identification report, but are there any questions about where we're at so far? And I see a hand from Caitlin.
Yeah, I was just going to give feedback, and I emailed Brandon this when I had the chance to review the issues identification report, and your last few slides summarized it really well. I mean, as someone who has sat through these meetings, I actually feel like you captured our conversations really well, and there wasn't anything where I said, oh, that's really missing, or kind of, so just more of a kudos of, I think the last few slides kind of walk through where our discussions have been.
Thank you for that.
That's always great to hear that kind of feedback. Monica.
I know in the beginning, I mentioned, I thought others did also, like equity is considering those who don't have a voice yet, like the future residents of any buildings. And I don't know if I saw that sort of captured in this when I see stakeholders, and I felt like it was like the existing, you know, community or the existing developers, or I don't know. Is that, do you feel like that's captured in the definition of the populations that are referenced on those slides?
I do remember our discussion. I think that it is, I mean, it is intended to be like, to how do we not only engage people that live in a specific neighborhood, but engage people who are typically left out of the rezoning process. So I think that is more than just the immediate people around a particular rezoning, but ensuring that there's that ability to have that broader
I guess I kind of feel like the future residents, the future beneficiaries. I don't know how you capture that voice, but I know we've talked about it. Anyway, just flagging that.
We'll make sure that we're keeping that in mind as we're looking through the potential solution.
Great. Any other comments or feedback for CPD, or anyone feel like you're not yet clear about where we've been and where to move us into where we're going? Okay, I think we're good, Liz. So let's go ahead to propose strategies.
Okay, so let's get to the exciting part of our discussion. So that was really intended as that reminder of the issues that we've identified together and the criteria that we're using to help evaluate potential solutions. And now we'll move to highlighting the proposed strategies that are really rising to the top based on our discussions with the task force and initial evaluation that staff has done. We grouped them into these 4 themes, and Andrew and Rob are going to join after me to share the details of them. And we'll be sure to return to each of those slides for discussion after we've reviewed them all. But the 4 broad themes are, the first is really speaking to that need to make sure we're tailoring our process, and that not every rezoning is the same, and that we want to tailor our process requirements based on the rezoning size, the location, and the impact. So we have some initial ideas on how we can best integrate that into our process. The second is kind of this overall approach of making sure that our process is accessible, transparent, and that there's real opportunities for public engagement, and that they are meaningful opportunities for that. So we have a package of potential solutions that we're looking at to address that. The third one is around ensuring equitable commitments. And this is really kind of the piece of what we talked about at our last meeting of making sure there's enforceable tools that we have in place that can help us with the outcomes related to rezoning. So we'll speak about that a little bit more. And then the last is really, a key part of this process is revising that rezoning review criteria. So the actual criteria that is used to make a decision on a rezoning to make sure that both equity and community engagement are clearly considered. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Andrew first to talk through the first two strategies there.
Great. Thank you, Liz. And hello, everyone. As Liz said, this first proposed strategy is to tailor rezoning processes and fees based on the size, location, and impact of the proposed change. So throughout this process, we've heard there's a big difference between rezonings that impact a single small parcel, such as rezoning to allow an accessory dwelling unit, and those that could usher in major changes to a neighborhood, such as allowing many new residential units or allowing the evolution from industrial uses to a mix of uses. And this proposed approach acknowledges that input we've heard from you by allowing communities to focus their limited bandwidth on more meaningful engagement in those higher impact rezonings. So with this approach, some rezonings would fall under this first tier on the left side of the slide, where we'll explore options for bundling or expediting the adoption process. Besides low impact rezonings like accessory dwelling units, this tier could also include legislative rezonings of large areas to implement recently adopted area plans where there will have already been robust recent community engagement and where the city will concurrently be implementing other plan recommended tools to help mitigate the impacts of new development and address equity concerns. At the other end of the spectrum on the right side, you'll see the type 3 rezonings, and these would include those rezonings affecting larger areas such as multiple acres of land, or rezonings where there's a significant change in entitlement, such as introducing mixed uses into areas where only industrial uses were previously allowed, or a significant increase in the potential number of dwelling units. And then these may also include rezonings in neighborhoods that are vulnerable to displacement. We're still evaluating what the specific criteria or thresholds might be for these types of rezonings, and we'll bring that back to the task force in the next year, in 2023. But these would be the rezonings with the highest level of community engagement and awareness requirements. And then that middle tier would be those rezonings that don't fall into type 1 or 3 and would generally would proceed generally the same way that rezonings do now, subject to improved awareness and engagement and updated rezoning criteria that we'll talk about in the next slides. And I should also just highlight here that the blue box there at the bottom right of the slide is and the next few slides cross-references these proposed strategies with the issues identified in the issue identified. Looks like we have a hand up.
Yeah, Joel?
Yeah, hi, Andrew. I know we'll probably spend a good amount of time with type 3 because it's the most complicated, but here I want to ask a question about type 1. I can see how bundling, or my imagination of what bundling applications for rezoning means, a bunch of individual, unrelated, smaller rezonings kind of going through a process together, that would clearly be beneficial for staff and for city council. But will it also be beneficial for the property owners? A lot of times these are individual homeowners or owners of small businesses who are unfamiliar with this process. It's burdensome to hire a lawyer to fill out all the application stuff and the application fee. So with certain criteria for kind of clearly meeting plan support, can this be more efficient for them as well in having be more accessible, not taking as long, not being as expensive, and not being as sort of bogged down in special language one has to know to respond to these things? Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Joel. I appreciate you bringing that up, and that's absolutely all of the above of what you said is essentially true in these types of rezonings. We would look at how we as the city can support these types of zonings going through, and that could include, you know, a single application prepared to take through you know, multiple separate properties, or, you know, rezoning properties as part of a legislative rezoning, and certainly exploring fees and other ways to make this beneficial, these simpler rezonings beneficial to property owners as well.
Maybe I could test one that you and I are both familiar with. Let's say there's an individual property that has zoning that is old code zoning or custom zoning that's no longer usable, and they want to bring it into the new code. And what they would hope for is something that clearly meets the criteria. So let's take the Women's Bean Project. It was located at an old firehouse in Curtis Park, and had custom zoning specific to bean assembly, if you can imagine. And since they were moving, it needed to be rezoned, and UMX 2X is sort of the smallest, you know, least impact mixed use zoning designed for embedded neighborhoods was kind of the obvious choice. Would that have been a candidate in your mind? And I know this is hypothetical, but would that have been a candidate in your mind for type 1 rezoning, where it gets added to a list to go through with a bunch of other things in a bundle?
Great question. I would say that, and I want to say first that we're still thinking about these tiers and how they would work, and identifying the specific criteria that would drop a rezoning proposal into one of these tiers. But I would say that one seems to be at first glance kind of right on the bubble between a type 1 and maybe a type 2 rezoning. Certainly I do hear what you're saying about, you know, being fairly, you know, clearly supported by the plan, fairly low impact, and an opportunity to reduce costs and complexity for an organization that's doing good work in the community. And so your point is well taken. We'll look at that potentially as a sample zone rezoning as we continue to really finalize the criteria that would go along with this tiered system, and bring that back to the task force next year.
Great question. And I think if we allow CPD to go through some of the slides, we will have some of the questions answered, and also opportunities to come back and discuss a whole lot more as well. They're great questions, though, as we go along, so we don't want to lose them. So we'll try to balance back and forth between that. So Andrew, you can always feel free to tell us if you're going to answer it in the next slide, and we'll trust you on that as well.
Okay. All right, thanks for advancing the slide there, Rob. So this next proposed strategy is to overhaul the way that members of the public learn about and become engaged in the rezoning process, which is a key topic that we've heard from this group over the course of this the work of this task force. This proposed approach would include several possible updates, such as updating noticing materials to improve accessibility. That could include using plainer language and graphics, translation into language spoken by area residents, and updates that better accommodate people who are blind or visually impaired, just as some examples. This would also include expanding our current mailed notice requirements to include renters and business tenants, improving the functionality and the accessibility of city web pages that are conveying information about rezonings to potential applicants and the public. Pursuing additional email notification opportunities. One approach here that we're looking at right now is an opt-in system that would allow residents to request email notification for a geographic area of their choice. Requiring community impacts for community engagement for those higher impact zonings, such as the tier 3 rezonings I discussed on the previous slide. Increasing the 200-foot mailed notice radius that currently exists for those higher impact rezonings as well. Improving and clarifying the And then finally, improving and clarifying the process guides so that applicants and community members have a clearer understanding of how rezonings work and how they can participate and provide input. So now my colleague Rob will provide additional details on the other two proposed strategies.
And just, I know we're getting some questions in the chat as well. Just for everybody to know, we're going to go over these slides quickly and come back to each page. So hold on to those questions. We're going to come back at, we wanted to give you the whole picture and then come back and do individually as well.
Can I just respond to that really quick? I don't need an answer right now, but can I put the question there? Because my little brain will forget in, you know.
Okay. Absolutely welcome to put the question, and I will be coming back and repeating what's in there just because everybody can't see chat as a reminder for part of our equity to be inclusive of everyone. So don't worry about it. We'll come back to them as well. But we'll just hold on answering them until we get a chance to verbally do so.
All right. Thanks, Rox, and thanks, Andrew. This next proposed strategy really addresses another major goal of this project, which is to address how rezonings would improve equity in Denver and in the communities where they're occurring. So this strategy focuses on the potential commitments or requirements that future developments of an area that are granted that additional entitlement through the rezoning might be required to fulfill. So this is a really complex problem to solve, and we're still working through the details of how these commitments would work. And part of the reason for this is that this would involve many different city departments and offices that might have the better tools or something closer in their toolbox in order to administer these commitments. So we're working with them to develop these tools that would administer and enforce these commitments. To ensure that developers and future owners would follow through on these commitments. So for example, a rezoning may require a community serving use in an agreement that is part of the rezoning approval. So we need to work with our partners to develop these tools to monitor and enforce this requirement kind of on into the future. We're also working to determine at what point in the development process these commitments are most effective to be developed and enforced, even if that the commitment is kind of memorialized during the rezoning process. If there's another stage in the development process that occurs afterward where it's makes more sense to kind of work through the details of that with our partners. So these commitments, again, are primarily being considered for the type 3 rezonings that focus on not only larger rezonings in areas, but also in places that are vulnerable to displacement and have a history of inequitable development. So this last strategy focuses on updating the 5 criteria that are currently used to evaluate rezoning requests. So this is another one that's very complex, and we're looking closely at each of the criteria to understand which ones need to be retained potentially for legal reasons or that might be required by our city charter. We're also evaluating which criteria could be updated or consolidated in order to improve clarity or remove redundancy. And also in order to advance our goals for adopted plan strategies and also enhance equity. We're reviewing these criteria specifically through an equity lens, but we're looking at them along with this comprehensive overhaul of the rezoning process to understand what changes to the criteria might be needed to ensure that the equity is evaluated during the criteria review, kind of in tandem with those other changes, and kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of the other parts of this project. And then finally, the criteria can be difficult to decipher. So these are a legal framework for evaluating the rezoning requests, and therefore they will always contain some degree of legal jargon and legalese. So creating companion documents for community members and applicants that would move along with these updated criteria, we would hope to demystify how these criteria are used and what their purpose is.
Okay, we have, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I had nothing else.
Okay. So let's go back to questions. So can we go back to slide number 11 where we had quite a few questions happening? And so in the chat we had from Monica, can you explain what is meant by cost recovery on slide 11?
I can speak to that. So we included that just to acknowledge that with right now we typically charge rezoning applicants for sending postcards, for example. And so increasing the number of recipients, if we added renters and business tenants, for example, that could potentially double the number of postcards that get sent. So that's something that we'll continue to evaluate. We wanted to acknowledge that, you know, we'll have to somehow address those additional cost impacts in some way, and we'll continue that evaluation.
Great. The second question was from Brendan, sorry. Does this include notification at the pre-application stage?
Yeah, I can start with that, and then if anybody else wants to jump in as well, you're welcome to. Again, that's another another topic that I think will need some additional evaluation. As we have said previously, the vast majority of pre-apps don't actually become applications and move forward, because that's an opportunity for property owners to get a sense of how rezoning is evaluated, and occasionally they discover that it's unlikely that adopted plans would support their rezoning, and so they move away from that approach. So we'll continue taking a look at that. And Liz, anything else you'd like to add on that topic?
Sure, thanks. I wanted to kind of highlight a theme of that flows through all of these strategies. I think is part of our discussion of I'm wanting to make sure that we expand those opportunities for community engagement, but also making sure that they are meaningful opportunities, right? Not noticing and having people get involved and then feeling frustrated that their engagement necessarily make a difference. So some of our thinking here is to really focus in on those rezonings that have the highest impact, that are in those vulnerable neighborhoods, and make those requirements stronger there around that, both around requiring community engagement, but then also making sure that there's a way to there's some tools that help us get commitments to things that might come up during that community engagement and during that the consideration of the equity impact. So what we're exploring is making sure that we have that tool around doing the engagement when it's truly can be very meaningful. And that's the idea here. And certainly the idea, to Brendan's point, that that's very early in the process. So that again, the engagement can have more of that impact on the overall outcome.
Great. Last thing, can we finish up with chat, and then we'll go to questions, unless Brendan was directly related to what Liz was answering.
Yeah, I just wanted to name that, you know, I feel like this is one of the strongest recommendations to those of us who live in neighborhoods vulnerable to displacement have lifted up. And while we appreciate, like, y'all, you know, being sensitive to where and when we should engage, and that should be meaningful, like, that shouldn't be a decision that's made for us. You know, what we're saying and what we hope has been heard is that those who are interested in getting notified at the earliest stage in the process should have an option to do that. As we've stated in previous meetings, the way it feels from the community perspective is that there's a sort of negotiation that happens in those meetings that happens absent community voice. And that significantly impacts the outcome of these projects. By the time community comes to the table, it feels like there's been signals and lights given to the developers that you're within your right to build it in this way or that. And so while we like really respect, like, y'all trying to not waste our time, like, let us make that decision. And it would be extremely discouraging if this recommendation, which is one of the only ones that we've really lifted up and pushed on, is not a part of this conversation. It would be very discouraging for those of us who have been lifting this up again and again throughout this process.
Thanks, Brendan. We have an additional comment from Joel in the chat, but I want to see if Flora and Lindsay is on this same subject. Otherwise, I'll come to you right after we get to Joel. So Flora, yours is, go ahead.
Yeah, so mine is, and what I was going to say, first of all, I agree with Brendan. And second of all, when it comes to the notice, one of my other concerns was just being overly burdensome on depending on the type of rezoning that it is. Like, I think if it's a development coming into my neighborhood, that is more concerning to let people know than if my neighbor wants to build an ADU. So is that being factored in?
Flora, I want to make sure I understand the question. You're saying that you agree with the idea of learning about the higher impact developments, or are you saying that you think you?
Right.
Okay.
Sorry, yes on that. So is this specifically just to higher impact developments? Because I also am saying if it's a less impact, there will be a difference. I just want to verify that that's the case.
Well, and I think that that's still something that we're considering, and it's great to hear this feedback. All rezonings, currently require some form of notification, and we're looking at, generally speaking, we're looking at making these types of improvements for all rezonings. But certainly the higher impact rezonings would have those enhanced community engagement requirements, and those additional requirements that we've talked about versus the what we're thinking of as the type 1 or tier 1 rezonings, which would likely stay with kind of a more standard notification approach.
So Rob, I think, or Andrew, I think that's what you were trying to explain on the slide right prior to this, correct? So why don't we just pop back to that for 1 second and spend an extra second there so that it's clearer for folks. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. So there would still be, certainly notification for all rezonings, but these enhanced notification requirements and community engagement requirements would apply most likely to the higher impact developments. Flora, did that answer your question?
It did. So the other thing that I just mentioned, which kind of plays into this adopted plans, is that a lot of these neighborhoods don't have adopted plans. So that is kind of, in my opinion, a priority when it comes to, if you're going to say if it's into the adopted plan and our adopted plan is not reasonable. My neighborhood, Athmar Park, has an adopted plan from a long time ago that's totally irrelevant to today.
Okay, that's a
so
great
just re-emphasizing that.
Thank you for that.
Flora, I'm going to come back to you when we get to slide 13 too, so we can go into that a little more in depth as well. Lindsay, are you on this topic as well?
Yes, I am. I just wanted to kind of echo what Brendan was saying, and especially for type 3 rezonings, giving notification at the pre-application or at the pre-application phase, if that's something like he said that people from neighborhoods vulnerable to displacement have repeatedly said would make this process more equitable, then I would urge everyone to listen to that.
Okay. Great. Joel, you had a comment in chat. Do you want me to read it? And then we'll go to Myra. Or do you have it? You want to talk about Lakewood?
Yeah, I could just sum up on page 7 on the consideration of public input, timing and format of public hearings. And so I was hoping on page 11, I would see something about sort of making the public hearing something that people can access the benefits of, and mostly it's around the staff report, having that be viewable long before the public hearing, because that's where people often get their questions answered. And then if they have a comment to make, they can make it from a more informed perspective. No matter when you schedule a public hearing, it's going to be a bad time for someone. So Lakewood has done this very successfully, and it got a much more diverse participation. And I've recently learned several other Colorado cities have picked up on the exact same tool for doing that. So I'd love to see exploring that added to page 11. Thanks.
Great.
Hi, Joel.
Thank you.
And just to touch on that really quickly, that is absolutely something that we're considering. We looked closely at Lakewood and some of those other surrounding cities, and we've kind of tied that in. I think you're right. It probably deserves its own little box on this slide, but we're definitely considering that in the way that we would improve the website, have additional information on there. It might include the presentation and other information that would otherwise, like you said, not really be gleaned until the hearing, and then improve the ability for folks to comment on a specific rezoning, and again, looking at potential ways to consider the accountability of that once decision makers are seeing that and making their decision. So hear you loud and clear. Thanks for making that comment.
Okay, Myra.
My question is also along the same lines around timing, but mine is, are we going to recommend times? One of the issues that we've noticed when rezonings occur in our area is that the notice feels like it's very delayed, or the community does not receive the proper information or public information within a timely manner. Sometimes it's weeks before anything gets posted onto the city website, and we lose people that way. And so are there recommendations for the frequency or when things should be posted?
I can at least say a few words about that, and then perhaps Rob or Liz or others want to jump in. I think that would fall under the slide that's here. There are currently noticing requirements for rezonings. There are, requirements for I'm sure you've probably seen the posted notice signs that go out in advance of a public hearing, the yellow signs in front of properties, email notification to registered neighborhood organizations, and other requirements. And as part of these, improving opportunities for public engagement, we can definitely look at the method and timing of those notices, and potentially one of the possible solutions that could assist with that is if we're able to set up a system where people could opt in to email notice for a particular geography of the city. So they could say, I want to get an email notice of anything that's happening in this neighborhood or something like that. And that would provide an opportunity for people to get that first notice that goes out. But certainly, as part of this, advancing these proposals, we can look at the required time in advance of a rezoning for a notification as well, and ensure that those are meeting community requirements.
Great. Any other comments from the group on slide number 11? Okay, oops, go ahead.
The comment I just made is related to this when it comes to the improving guides. I think some people need more than a guide. If they could make an appointment like, hi, I want to do this to my home. I'm specifically talking about people that are trying to stay in their neighborhoods and improve their home in a way that allows like multi-generational housing and things like that. Because I think just providing them a guide isn't enough.
This is Claudia. I also have a comment.
Sorry about that, Claudia. You're next, and then we'll go to Councilwoman Sita Baca.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate all of this conversation, and it seems to me maybe if we focus first on sort of, the approach of a human-centered design through the lens of equity, and that, what we're really talking about here, it seems like property, but really it's the people that own the property, and the concern of displacing folks and people who are lay folks in the development and rezoning process. And with that being said, sort of like putting up yellow signs and notifications, for me, I'm blind, that's just completely irrelevant to me. But finding a way, and some people will not even know to opt in or how to opt in or that they can opt in, but maybe looking at the zip codes of the folks who pay wastewater management and seeing if they have an email or a mailing address and phone numbers associated with those accounts. And it might be a little time consuming, but I think good databases of areas could be developed so that rather than somebody opting in, you can also reach out to them and make sure that more folks are aware. But I mean, really, this is about people and the property and you know, the concern of displacement. And I think, you know, so you could have an older person who has a property and would like to do something with it. So they kind of get like an ombudsman rather than a guide, you know, someone who is available. And I think that's pretty much all my comment is finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman?
Thank you. I have been beating this drum for a while, so I may have already said it to this group, but building on Dr. Folska's comments and others, there is technology that can give residents an actual decision-making opportunity. And so instead of, for example, sending the postcards, like Dr. Folska said, you have a database of individuals either through PocketGov or through voter registration or through a combination of all of those things plus utilities where you have contact information. You can get people to opt into push notifications where they get those push notifications and they can respond directly on to those push notifications with a yes or no or need more information type of vote or input. That way, when a council member is making a decision, you know, we can go to our dashboard and look at, okay, all of the surrounding radius of this property is saying, no, they don't want this, or yes, they do want this. And so like we have a better data-driven way to make decisions on their behalf, either as council members or CPD. That's it.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments about this slide? Okay, let's move then to slide 12. And we didn't have anything in chat on the next slide. So how do people feel about the proposed strategy and the develop tools? Any comments or questions? Okay, well, then let's go on to slide 13, where we did have comments and thoughts from the group.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I went too fast. Monica and then Brendan.
There were a lot of words there.
Can you go back a slide too?
Yeah, go back.
Yeah.
So is this proposing that the city becomes the arbiter, I guess, between community groups and a developer?
I think
To determine the, yeah, go ahead.
Not particularly. I think we're really trying to figure out how exactly what tools we could develop and could use, whether there are, you know, if it is the city who does this, whether it's through a community benefits agreement between the developer or private entity or something. But there are issues with those types of agreements because not every community has the resources to go into those deep negotiations and things like that. So, you know, we're really considering all of these options. We're really trying to figure out where the city might have tools so that we could not be the arbiter between a community group specifically and a developer, but would work with the developer in coming to these agreements. But we're pretty early on in this phase of developing what these tools might look like, or even what commitments are possible here.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the, you know, $80,000 question, or is it the 60,000? I don't know. Figuring this out is the important thing, right? And I know you know, I'm sure maybe folks have read the Ezra Klein piece on the homeless issue in Los Angeles, and just, you know, lack of predictability, lack of processes, complicate the development we need for, addressing the housing crisis. So having predictability, lowering, creating greater equity in that negotiation between community and development is, what we need to figure out, right? So it's not like one neighborhood had a better negotiator, so they got something better. And so developers are cutting deals, depending on, the effectiveness of the community to represent their interests. And so, yeah, I look forward to seeing how this goes. It sounds really hard. And I just think the role of the city as, is problematic potentially. Yeah.
If I could just respond, I think, Monica, you're definitely hitting on something we've heard through this discussions that we've been having is that, and we've heard in the community, is often the issue is about like not exactly the rezoning, but what the actual development is that's coming, or the desire for certain specifics around it. And we don't have a lot of tools right now in the city to guarantee any of those. And often it is a private agreement that sometimes has an issue with being enforced. And I don't think we're expecting that those go away, but we could have like more of a menu of predictable tools that the city can enforce. That, we can say, like, given this analysis on this rezoning, given this engagement that we've done, like, this makes sense that they need this tool, and we have a way to have the city be part of helping enforce that, so it's not all on our communities, and it's more predictable through the process. But it's certainly a big lift, and we feel like it's important to this whole discussion is, again, around having meaningful engagement, that there is kind of an outcome that comes from that meaningful engagement is important. So that's where we're trying to make some progress on getting those tools.
And I think, the city's trying to respond to the feedback from you all that oftentimes you get an agreement and then what? And I think, Brendan, you shared some great examples of that at our last meeting, or maybe 2 meetings ago. So Brendan and then Lindsay.
I think Lindsay was first.
Oh, sorry. That's very nice of you. Lindsay and then Brendan.
Thanks, Brendan. I just had a quick question. Isn't one option to just tie the approval of the rezoning to an agreement to fulfill one of these requirements? Like, the rezoning will be approved if you sign this MOU that there will be a community benefits agreement. I guess I'm kind of not understanding the concern about the city's role here, because I think the city's role really depends on what kind of agreement or what kind of I don't know what kind of expectation is placed on the developer or the community group or whatever. It just seems really specific to the specific development or rezoning. But I guess I've been involved in the CBA, and the city kind of just did that, and the city wasn't really involved at all. So yeah, I don't know. I guess my suggestion is, can we make the rezoning contingent on following through with some of these requirements? And then maybe a little more explanation from Monica or from someone else about what the concern is with the city's role in this.
I could do the initial response to that. I think the challenge there with making it contingent on the CBA is the piece of if those elements of the CBA fall through, the city doesn't have a role in kind of helping make sure they're enforced and they happen over time. That's sort of, it takes a strong neighborhood organization or others to make sure that there's enforcement mechanisms in them. But from the city's perspective, say when a permit comes in later, we're not checking for those things that are in that CBA or making sure over time that they're enforced. And we think that, again, this doesn't mean for everything that would be in a CBA necessarily, but key pieces, we could, kind of take some of that burden from the community and have the city be part of the enforcement piece to make sure that commitment really happens over time.
I guess I would say I'd echo Monica's concern about that a little bit. I think that that could be really difficult and problematic for the city to start enforcing some of these things, depending on what it is. Because a CBA in particular is an agreement between a developer and a community group. And then when the city gets involved, it kind of murks things a little bit. So maybe I do understand what Monica was saying now, but Monica, I don't know if you want to elaborate.
Well, I just don't think people perceive the city as, objective or agnostic. And so it inherently sort of undermines the city's ability to kind of be this honest broker. I don't know. You know, I see Councilwoman Sita Baca, you know, city funded that word, omnibus. Okay.
You got it.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not able to talk today. I'm not being able to talk today. So I don't know. I think just like a third party that is kind of perceived as trustworthy, but you know, that's another layer. So I'm struggling with it. This is the challenge.
Great. This is great feedback. As CPD goes deeper and thinking about this is terrific feedback for them to keep thinking about. Brendan.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to lift up that it makes me a little bit anxious to hear the suggested process that this is going to go like behind closed doors for the next 3 months and then come back to us. You know, I feel like there's probably going to be, 10,000 conversations that are had between now and then. And from our experience, by the time it comes back, it's going to feel like the spaces for community involvement and input are going to be shrunk significantly because of all the work you guys are going to put in to develop these concepts. And so I'm just naming that. Like, I feel like a better process would be to potentially create like work groups, on these different 4 identified topics and have those who are interested in participating. So there is some accountability and transparency with this community-centered group to participate. But the idea of like it going behind closed doors and then coming back to us 3 months now after it's pretty much fully baked, like makes me a little bit uncomfortable.
Could I respond briefly to that too? Just to
extremely uncomfortable, to be honest.
To clarify some of the what Laura was saying at the beginning, part of this is a staffing challenges. So we're not going to be working full steam that we have been. So we have vacancies within CPD. We don't have the ability to spend as much time as we think that we need to actually solve these issues. So it's not like we're running full speed ahead, and it's really acknowledging that we need more staff to be able to do that. But we do want to have some meaningful ideas that we can talk through and some progress. And it's not intended that we come back and say this is all figured out, but more like we have had more discussions and we've brought more departments to the table. And we can certainly think about that, Brendan, when we're ready to kind of be fully staffed again, that like how we involve the task force and how we do that engagement. But the break we're talking about is also just about staffing challenges on the team.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I love Maggie's suggestion of like, how can we make sure that the community voice is still centered, and, where are we given opportunities to suggest what these enforceable commitments should be, et cetera. And so I just want to raise that up. And, I think all of us are here because we want to be and because we're invested in the outcomes. And so I imagine most of us would want to continue to engage and to support, especially if there's like, capacity issues. Like, so how can you tap into this group and have us help be thought partners, rather than like go behind closed doors and come back to us with something that always just feels icky, from community perspective, to feel like we're coming back to something that's already been fully cooked, where the opportunities to give input are shrunk because of how much the conversation has progressed without us at the table. So just want to name that.
Okay, anything else? Okay, let's go to slide 13 then and get some more feedback there. And absolutely, then chat, there's also people saying we don't want to come back and have decisions already made.
I do see that. Flor, was that in your question? Was that in relation to slide 12 about DEI?
It was kind of in relation to like this whole conversation. Does CPD have a specific I know that the city has like a DEI department now. Does CPD have get someone from that department, or is there someone that's in this group has that position to make sure that these things are equitable?
We do work closely with the Office of Social Equity and Inclusion, and we have our own liaisons through CPD that are kind of our EDI team that work closely with them. So they certainly would be part of the discussions on what we move forward with.
Those are people on CPD staff that are partnering with that department. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, we have a team that has people from different divisions within CPD that work closely with OSCI.
Okay to move to the next slide. On 13, we had Flor, you raised the question about the review criteria and including neighborhood plans. Do you want to talk more about this in relationship to these recommendations?
So, I mean, I think I pretty much said, but I guess it does go here, which is when you talk about consistency with adopted plans, a lot of these neighborhoods have outdated adopted plans or a lack of adopted plans. So that's why that particular item is concerning to me.
Any thoughts from CPD on that?
I would just say we've certainly heard that concern, and I think that yeah, there's definitely disparities across the city in terms of who has recent plans and who does not. And part of this is, as we put together kind of a package of updates to our zoning code, how do we make sure that equity piece, which is a key part of this, is lifted up in that criteria, and made sure that that's a key part of reviewing it, whether or not you have a very recent neighborhood plan.
Okay, anything else on this strategy?
Just that I have the same issue with consistency with adopted plans being entirely too vague. In cases where you have overlapping plans in my district, sometimes there are up to 5 overlapping plans and they don't all say the same thing. And so if we're going to keep this criterion, like, I think that we need to consolidate everything into a single plan and amend every time there's a new updated plan for someplace, because it's very unfair to neighborhoods who spent time on a neighborhood plan to be overridden because comp or blueprint or some other plan might say something else.
Any thoughts, CPD?
I think those are very good points that we'll continue to consider as we think about how we update the criteria, and also just how we also explain how the criteria is used to community and applicants.
Okay, any other feedback on this recommendation?
Just one more note on that about the multiple plans. I want to echo that. And I just, joined the Dr. Cog Civic Academy, and now I know there's like that whole plan. And it's like, I think one thing that I've heard from people that are the developers is that they can't, function with all these different plans, and it's hard to hold them accountable if we don't have like one plan that has everything together. So I do want to echo that.
Great. And there's more feedback in the chat just for CPD about, how might we as members of the task force stay engaged, and the importance of staying engaged. So I'm just highlighting that for people who aren't able to see the chat, and just encouraging us to keep talking about that, because there's a number of folks who have said that they're concerned about next steps.
Yeah, I just want to say I really appreciate that feedback, because I think, part of what we're telling you is that we're recognizing this is going to take longer, because some of these are very complicated tools to figure out, and we really appreciate the willingness of the task force to help us with that. So part of it is us giving you more meat to chew on and discuss, but we appreciate the offers that you're willing to continue and on this path with us and help us figure this out. So, because I know when we originally asked you to join, we were anticipating we might be ready to wrap up towards the end of the year. So thank you for all of that.
Okay, let's go on to slide 14, and from the chat, oh, got that already. So let's go to slide 14. So let's go a little deeper on this one. Rob, you want to go ahead and go over this slide?
This is actually just our summary slide.
Yeah, this just
again
reviews the 4. I can push on to the next one, Liz, if you're ready to continue with those.
Sure, if we're done with the questions there. Yeah, if you go to the next one, this sort of it's touching on some of the things that we've been talking about in some of the questions on the last one, but these are, you know, some of what we've identified as some of the things that we will work on, and we'll be bringing back to the task force when we reconvene. It's really, you know, continuing to evaluate some of these strategies further to and outlining what that means for the zoning text itself and the process steps, evaluating kind of feasibility and timing, some of those issues we talked about, cost and what our fees are, and bringing that back for discussion. Continuing to try to, we got a lot of good feedback on it tonight, so that'll help us, but continue to work out that definitions of those types of rezonings and where we might have more requirements or different requirements for different types of rezonings, and like helping to define those a little more for further discussion. We will work interdepartmentally to try to make some progress on the types of tools we might be able to offer to the process. And then coming back with specific suggestions for the rezoning criteria. And as I was reiterating, the idea is that then we would reconvene the task force and think about what additional engagement we need to do there to start talking about more detail on what those strategies are before we would move forward with final proposed strategies and move into an adoption process. So we would hope that most of you are able to continue with this conversation as we develop more to talk about and as we reconvene in 2023.
Joel?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I had to switch because my internet connection wasn't great. Just going back to some of the previous comments, my only concern on this slide is the lower right, where it says review of final proposed strategies. It has the feel of once we reconvene, it's a speak now or forever hold your peace. They've already been finalized. Actually, the circular icon in the middle on the left says final as well. So I think if that were, you know, proposed strategies on the left and then reconvening task force to review the proposed strategies, it'd be a lot more comfortable. I served on, several years ago, I served on a task force with CPD trying to figure out what to do with general development plans. And we reached a very similar point here where there were a lot of diverse views. The thing was deeper than was expected when we first joined and got a lot of information, documented it, and then CPD kind of went away for a while, partially also due to staffing issues. And when they came back, we reconvened. They developed some thoughts, but then we did have several sessions to say, okay, we see how you've kind of developed where to go with where we left off, but we had lots of time to give feedback and refine that. It ended up being the large development review process we have today. So I'm inclined to be really supportive of this because I've seen it work before, but certainly echoing others on this call, their hesitation. I'm reacting to this word final on the screen here because I think we should plan to have, even if we start from a point where some work has been done to figure out what's possible, not giving the impression that you meet once and you send it on its way.
I would just say, very good point, but like was probably a poor choice of words here to say final, and in no way are we suggesting that we're going to try to rush through the process at the end. Again, this was about us acknowledging we think this needs more time to develop the solutions and talk through them with the task force. So I think we can certainly say that we'd have more draft strategies for you to react to and have, it's not intended to be that you have one task force meeting, but we could have multiple task force meetings and figure out what the right process is to make sure we get to strategies that were, the task force supports, so that we've fully discussed and iterated on.
This is Claudia.
Yes, Claudia, go ahead.
Thank you. Maybe one of the things we could do to resolve this issue about feeling like this is final is to just remove the words final, and when it's final, the task force gives their stamp of approval and comes to consensus. One of the other things I wanted to suggest for consideration is when we talk about DE&I, that we add an A for accessibility, and you could even arrange the letters to say idea for the 21st century. And therefore, accessibility is never another other. Thank you.
Thank you
for that, Claudia. I think we can, even on this presentation, as we save it going forward, make sure it doesn't say final to provide that clarity.
Great. Any other comments on this? Liz? Your hand went up. I don't know if you meant to.
Sorry, no, that was not on purpose. Though Joel still has his hand up. And
I think, Joel, are you still from before, or you have additional thought? Oh, I think it was from before. Okay. Liz, where would you like to go next?
I can see Rob already took out the word final from one part of the slide. But I think the next slide is really a kind of a repeat and a wrap up type of slide. So if we wanted to, if there's any more discussion or questions to have, we can go to that. But this was kind of repeating the piece about our schedule, and that we certainly will be back in touch with the task force about when we expect to reconvene, and maybe some of those thoughts about how we make sure that we're setting expectations about the level of engagement and checking that all of you can continue to participate. Because again, I don't want to assume that everybody will be able to extend their participation in the future.
So are there other thoughts from task force members before we go to public comment? Let's go ahead and take the slides down. Thank you. Any other thoughts? All right, do we have public comment?
Can I just clarify really quickly?
Kate and Monica. Monica and then Kate.
Go ahead, Kate. You haven't said anything yet. Go for it.
It took me forever to figure out how to raise my hand again. So I was just wondering if there's a way to poll like everyone here to see if they can move forward, so that there's some comfort or discomfort in this team about whether they'll be involved or not involved moving forward. I don't know how to do that though, but you have some smart people on your team.
And I think my question, well, to follow up on Kate, is can you remind us, and I know I was late in joining, so it says there winter, fall, winter, spring, and the row, like, so remind me, is it, maybe we don't know, we're taking a break for 3 months and then, but maybe not. I mean, what is the lift y'all are expecting?
So I'd say we definitely, right now we have November and December scheduled. We actually hadn't scheduled additional task force meetings with you all. So we definitely will cancel the November and December meetings. We're kind of working internally on our schedule of like when we think we'd kind of be, as I said, back up fully staffed, have a little bit more meat on here to talk about potential strategies further with the group. So we put that estimate in of, we think late winter, early spring, but we certainly would reach out to this group. We think like early next year to say, here's a more kind of refined schedule and get that confirmation. But to Kate's point, if it would be helpful to have like a straw poll that we won't hold any of you to if you change your mind in the future, be happy to hear like if that sounds like wildly like not possible for you essentially, or if you think that sounds reasonable. And that could, you know, depending on what we map out, that could be, you know, several months again of engagement with you all to iterate on solutions.
So that nobody has to be embarrassed about whether or not they can participate. Let's have you let Brendan know if you know you aren't able to participate based on what you know thus far. And then when CPD knows whether they're asking for 5 meetings, 12 meetings, 22 meetings, I'm making numbers up, folks. I have no idea what they're going to ask for. So don't go out and say 22 meetings, please, that they can come back and ask you at that point. Is that okay? And Brendan, you're either the people can email you that sort of thing if they know right now that they cannot commit any further.
Yes, we will definitely welcome that. So feel free to reach out to me if that's the case.
And will you just throw your email in chat again so everybody has it? I can't imagine somebody doesn't have it immediately popping up, but on the off chance that everybody's systems aren't working the same, if you do that, that'd be great.
I can do that. And there's a lot of confusion with the Brandon, like there's a lot of different spellings. So I'm happy to put that in the chat.
Other thoughts? Okay, let's go to.
Sorry, I guess I have a question. So if folks drop off, would you repopulate it with new folks?
I think we'd need to consider, right? I think we do want a diverse group and we have really good representation here. So I think we kind of have to look at where we are. Again, my hope is that most people will be able to, but we need to evaluate if, you know, there might be an alternative from the same organization that's able to then join in, but we could kind of cross that bridge when we get to it.
Other questions or thoughts? Okay, let's move to public comment for people who are have been here with us and listening. Are there thoughts from folks in the audience? And if you have thoughts, if you raise your hand, and then Sabrina will elevate you so you can provide public comment. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. So back to task force members, anything else from you all? Okay, Liz.
Okay, well, I just want to really thank everybody again for all the work that you have done. This will continue to be an important project for CPD, and I know it's an important project for all of you. So thank you for being gracious with us and allowing us the time that we need to help us get to some good solutions here, and hope that you'll all be able to continue to partner with us going forward.
And just so folks are really clear, you have been given and sent a notice from us and the meetings have been removed, but I know that not all calendars interface. And so if you would also go in and make certain, just take your couple minutes you got left in this meeting, and that you eliminate the meetings at this time on Wednesday, November 16th and December 14th. Otherwise, I'm liable to show up somewhere and you and I have a meeting that we didn't plan on having about something not at all related. So if you would just take the moment to do that on your calendars, that will help all of our calendars sync together. All right, thank you all very, very much. We'll go ahead and end the recording at this time as well.
Thanks, everybody.